Boris Johnson is prepared to spark a major constitutional crisis, drawing the Queen into the heart of politics in order to get Brexit done by the end of the month. The Prime Minister is said to be prepared to squat in Downing Street and will dare the monarch to fire him if MPs topple his administration in a confidence vote and seek to delay the UK's exit from the European Union. It comes as the Queen was today pictured looking glum at Balmoral as she attended a church service in Crathie Kirk. The 93-year-old monarch is set to be drawn into the heart of the debate, despite the fact that she has previously worked hard to remain separated from frontline politics. Under a backbench law passed last month, Mr. Johnson has to seek a 3-month Brexit delay if there is no deal by October 19, and opposition parties are planning to try to topple his administration. But he has continued to insist that Brexit will happen on Halloween, despite court documents last week admitting he would comply with the then Act. Unless the police turn up at the doors of 10 Downing Street with a warrant for the Prime Minister's arrest, he won't be leaving, a senior source told the Sunday Times. Housing Secretary Robert Jenrick this morning said that the PM would absolutely comply with the law, but refused to confirm or deny that he would sign the letter asking for an extension. He told Sky's Ridge on Sunday the UK would be leaving on October 31st, and we will be doing everything in our power to bring that about. We've said that as any government would do, we will comply with the law. However, all of our efforts now are focused on trying to get a deal, he said. And we've just put forward some, I think, very reasonable and thoughtful proposals to the EU. They try to answer the questions that had dogged the previous deal prepared by Theresa May. Pressed again, Mr. Jenrick said, the Prime Minister has been very clear that he is not going to extend Article 50. I don't think he personally could have been any clearer. We have said that we will comply with the law. However, what we're going to do now is work as hard as we possibly can to secure the deal. It came as Speaker John Bercow was suggested as a replacement Prime Minister in a so-called Government of National Unity, new. The opposition parties remain fractured over who should replace Mr. Johnson to seek a Brexit delay if he loses a confidence vote. Labour is demanding Jeremy Corbyn be installed in number 10, but the Lib Dems will not accept his leadership. Mr. Bercow is the latest of several alternatives to be considered by he is so hated by Brexiteers. He is very much an outside bet. Shadow Attorney General Baroness Chakraborty dismissed the idea that the Speaker could take over. She said, if I may say so, we are now getting into almost fantasy football. I think it's unlikely, I really do. In another snub to the Queen, Mr. Johnson is also said to have avoided apologising to her over the advice he gave her in order to prorogue Parliament last month. After the advice was deemed unlawful by the Supreme Court, he expressed regret to the monarch. It came as the PM warned of plans to sabotage the European Union by vetoing the bloc's 7-year budget if a deal is not reached by October 31. Britain will leave the EU in 25 days without a deal unless senior figures agree to compromise. In the case of a delay, Mr. Johnson will paralyze the EU, senior aides revealed. If Brexit is pushed back after October 31, the leader of the Brexit party, Nigel Farage, could be drafted in as the British commissioner in Brussels to disrupt meetings, reports claim. Two cabinet ministers told the Sunday Telegraph they were, among others, backing the more aggressive approach to Brussels. It comes after the EU said Mr. Johnson's proposals for an exit agreement, which include a plan for customs check on the Northern Irish border, did not provide a basis for concluding an agreement. But the EU's chief Brexit negotiator Michel Barnier poured scorn on the chances of the new proposal succeeding, reportedly telling an event in Paris, "If they do not change, I do not believe, on the basis of the mandate I have been given by the EU 27, that we can advance." In comments reported by The Observer, he also reiterated the EU's claim that a no-deal outcome would never be Europe's choice. It would always be the UK's choice, not ours. This is while Shami Chakrabarti today accused the Prime Minister of speaking with a forked tongue over whether he legally has to seek a 3-month delay to the departure from the EU. She insisted that the backbench Ben Act concocted by MPs last month was drafted carefully and that Mr. Johnson will not be able to lawfully take the UK out of the EU without a deal or without Parliament's approval. Her intervention came after Mr. Johnson last night demanded that Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn name the date of the election after his party repeatedly blocked Tory attempts to call one immediately. Ms. Chakrabarti, the Shadow Attorney General, told the BBC's Andrew Marr show that once Ben Act has been complied with, October 19 is the cut-off. There should be a general election, certainly this side of Christmas, hopefully substantially before Christmases. It paves the way for a December election, as the campaign usually takes 5 weeks. Brexit Secretary Steve Barclay had earlier told Marr, "Getting Brexit done is the best way to get national unity in this country." Baroness Chakrabarti, however, questioned how Brexit can be achieved in compliance with the law. She said, "It was drafted with great care after a great deal of cooperation across the House of Commons, and it is very, very specific and explicit about the personal duty on the Prime Minister to either get a deal through the House of Commons or persuade the House of Commons that no deal is plausible, or he has to write a letter." The letter has been drafted and attached to the Act to the European Union asking for more time. She added, "He seems to have a very casual relationship with the law. He seems to think he is above the law." As the Supreme Court showed us a few weeks ago, he is not. No one is above the law, even a British Prime Minister. She said it is important to see what a Boris Johnson deal might look like and that Parliament must be able to scrutinise his proposals. She said his current proposals cannot get through. She said, however, that if a deal was approved by Dublin and Brussels, it would be something that would be more likely to pass Labour's tests. Despite this, another Labour MP, Lisa Nandy, who is seen as a bellwether of a group of opposition backbenchers in Leave seats, said she was still willing to break her party whip to support a deal. But she tore into the PM's plan and hammered him over reports he will row back on agreements made by his predecessor Theresa May on worker rights and environmental issues. Speaking on Sky's Ridge on Sunday, the Wigan MP said, "What we've got is a proposal which stands virtually no chance of being accepted by the EU, which creates two borders on the island of Ireland, which is completely incompatible with existing international law." Which rips up the workers' rights and protections and the environmental protections that we spent several months at the start of this year negotiating with the former Prime Minister. For all the talk of getting Brexit done, we are further from a deal than we were 2 months ago when he became Prime Minister. Her distance from the PM's position will come as a blow, as without a majority Mr. Johnson will need Labour rebels to break the party whip and support his deal in order to get it through the Commons. It came after The Sun reported that Mr. Johnson would abandon a pledge to maintain a level playing field with EU standards after Brexit in order to get trade deals. Workplace protection was one of the areas suggested where there could be divergence, with Trade Minister Liz Truss tweeting that such a move was vital for giving us the freedom and flexibility to strike new trade deals and become more competitive. Ms. Nandy added that Mr. Johnson was not behaving like a PM who is at all serious. What he is doing is wasting time and running down the clock as we approach no deal, she added. Last week, Jeremy Corbyn ordered his Labour MPs to frustrate Boris Johnson's reckless attempt to secure a Brexit deal and get the UK out of the EU. The opposition leader laid out the command in the Commons amid claims by some backbenchers in Leave voting areas that as many as 30 of his MPs would be prepared to support the government's plan to get Brexit done. Tory Spartans also rallied behind the Prime Minister as he claimed his Brexit blueprint can bridge the chasm with the EU. Running the gauntlet of the House of Commons, the PM said he had put forward a serious blueprint that can win over a majority of MPs, again warning that the only alternative was no deal. He was bolstered by support from hardliners, who hailed progress in the talks. And some Labour moderates have also signalled they are on board. But Mr. Corbyn made clear he is determined to order his loyalist MPs to block the proposals if they ever come to Parliament. No Labour MP could support such a reckless deal that will be used as a springboard to attack rights and standards in this country, he said. Brussels' Brexit point man has warned Boris Johnson that he and the UK government alone would have to shoulder all the blame for the aftermath of a no-deal Brexit. Michel Barnier rejected the UK's latest offer of a deal which sets out a complex plan for the Northern Ireland border, saying the EU needed it to change. The European Commission's top Brexit negotiator, who has proved adept at frustrating efforts to seek a compromise deal, said a deal was still doable. But speaking at an event organized by the Le Monde newspaper last night, he said, "We are ready for no deal, even if we don't desire it," he said. No deal will never be the choice of the EU. If it happens, it would be Britain's choice. Mr. Barnier added, "If they do not change, I do not believe, on the basis of the mandate I have been given by the EU 27, that we can advance." It came as the PM warned of plans to sabotage the European Union by vetoing the bloc's 7-year budget if a deal is not reached by October 31. Britain will leave the EU in 25 days without a deal unless senior figures agree to compromise. In the case of a delay, Mr. Johnson will paralyze the EU, senior aides revealed. If Brexit is pushed back after October 31, the leader of the Brexit party, Nigel Farage, could be drafted in as the British commissioner in Brussels to disrupt meetings, reports claim. On Saturday, Mr. Johnson started phoning his EU counterparts to sell his proposals for a managed withdrawal from the bloc after the latest plans were given short shrift by Brussels. European diplomats say London needs to offer a revised viable way forward before the end of next week so that any haggling and legalistic work is done before a crucial EU summit on October 17-18. That high-stakes European Council meeting will determine whether Britain is headed for an agreement, extension, or potentially disastrous no deal. Finnish Prime Minister Antti Rinne, whose country currently holds the European Union's rotating presidency, said he had told Johnson it was important to find a solution within a week, and the British leader agreed with the timetable. Dutch Premier Mark Rutte tweeted he had told Johnson important questions remain about the British proposals, and there is a lot of work to be done ahead of the summit. Johnson was expected to also call the leaders of other EU countries after talks broke up without progress Friday between the top UK Brexit official, David Frost, and Mr. Barnier. The UK had been keen for discussions to continue through the weekend, but they were set to restart on Monday. Latvian Prime Minister Krišjānis Kariņš said today that Mr. Johnson's Brexit offer is a basis for negotiations. "I have full trust in the Commission as our negotiator to try to find a good compromise with the UK," he told BBC One's The Andrew Marr Show. If Mr. Johnson is willing to negotiate, that's a very good sign, and certainly from Europe's side we are always looking for a deal that works for everyone. Mr. Karen said striking a deal was fully dependent on the will of Mr. Johnson, because from the European side we are always open and looking towards a deal. If a deal can be found that keeps the single market intact and is not bad for the Republic of Ireland, I think it would work for the rest of the EU as well. Mr. Cairns added that the EU doesn't have a whole lot of wriggle room in negotiating a new deal, but said some tweaks were possible. To open up the entire agreement, I think that is very unrealistic, certainly in the short time frame. He said the PM probably could get an extension if it was to help hammer out a deal which is good for everyone. But just extending, for the sake of extension, I think there would be quite a bit of debate within the EU.